Tonight, the president responding to a tantalizing invitation.
The president could come right before the committee.
The Speaker of the House waiting for that RSVP ahead of public hearings picking up again on Capitol Hill.
Plus,
this is a very personal subject to me.
Supreme Court Justice Neil Gorsuch sits down with CBN News.
And
the Trump administration is reversing the Obama administration's approach towards Israeli settlements.
The Secretary of State makes a big announcement.
This as the situation in Syria worsens for Kurdish Christians on the ground. Plus,
the only superstar is Jesus.
Kanye West calling himself the greatest artist ever created by God.
All this and more tonight on Faith Nation.
Another marathon week of public impeachment hearings. Welcome to Faith Nation. I'm Jenna Browder.
And I'm Eric Phillips in for John Jessup tonight. This week, 8 witnesses are scheduled to testify in the House impeachment inquiry. And there's a chance they might get the biggest catch yet.
The House Speaker Nancy Pelosi has invited President Trump to testify, and he just might do it. Capitol Hill correspondent Abigail Robertson joins us with more. Abigail?
Well, Jenna, on that subject, President Trump took to Twitter this morning declaring, even though I did nothing wrong and don't like giving credibility to this no due process hoax, I like the idea and will, in order to get Congress focused again, strongly consider it. The president is responding to Speaker Pelosi's big Sunday invitation.
The president could come right before the committee and speak all the truth that he wants.
A sentiment echoed by Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer.
He shouldn't tweet. He should come to the committee and testify under oath.
As the public hearings pick back up this week, Republicans will finally bring forth their own witnesses.
What will happen as finally we are able to get some witnesses is the other side of the story.
And maintain the Democrats have no case.
There's accusations with no substance, no evidence whatsoever behind it. And I believe the more of this that the American people see, the more they are going to understand this is nothing but what from the beginning has been a witch hunt, an attempt to try to take down this president.
Another key witness this week, EU Ambassador Gordon Sondland. He would become the first public witness who claims to have had direct conversations with Trump about Ukraine. That includes the withholding of aid until Ukrainian President Zelensky agreed to publicly declare he would reopen the Burisma investigation, specifically looking into Joe Biden's son Hunter's involvement in the company.
Mr. Sondland has to decide whether his primary loyalty is to America or whether his primary loyalty is to the President of the United States.
Last week, Ambassador Bill Taylor testified that an aide overheard Sondland on a phone call with President Trump discussing the Ukrainian investigations.
Ambassador Sondland told President Trump the Ukrainians were ready to move forward.
That aide, David Holmes, testified behind closed doors Friday. Also slated this week is Vice Presidential aide Jennifer Williams, who listened in on the infamous July 25th phone call. Ahead of her public testimony Tuesday, Trump took to Twitter, accusing her of being a never-Trumper. Now, the House is expected to wrap their impeachment inquiry by Christmas, and it will then head to the Senate for trial at the beginning of the year. Now, these mandatory proceedings could spell big trouble for those 6 senators that are still in the presidential race, as it will severely decrease their campaign events ahead of the crucial Iowa and New Hampshire caucuses. Back to you, Eric and Jenna.
Abigail Robertson on Capitol Hill, thank you very much.
And here with us now is A.B. Stoddard with Real Clear Politics. A.B., good to have you. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
A.B., how serious do you think it is President Trump will actually testify?
President Trump will absolutely not be testifying. There's no question. And it doesn't matter what he's saying or thinking, his lawyers won't let him.
So there's no chance whatsoever. You're not leaving much room for wiggle room right there. Huh?
I said it here. I'm happy to come back if I'm proven wrong and eat a lot of shoes. I've been wrong before, but his lawyers know better.
Wow. Well, what about the fact that we learned today that the House is also investigating whether Trump lied to former special counsel Robert Mueller? Like, is this Russia probe coming back to life?
Well, the Roger Stone trial brought this back to life because Rick Gates, the former deputy campaign manager, testified that the president had conversations about WikiLeaks with Roger Stone. He has said that under oath. It was part of his trial evidence. So it's so this means that the answers the president provided in written form to special counsel Mueller are not true, or that Rick Gates was lying. And on President Trump's credibility record, I'm with Rick Gates on this. I would have to find out that he was lying, and the prosecutors obviously don't think that he was.
Well, Abby, we want to talk about 2020. Pete Buttigieg, he is now the front runner in Iowa, according to the Des Moines Register. What do you make of this recent surge we're seeing?
Well, a few things. So Pete Buttigieg was very beloved by a lot of the Obama donors. You know, he had this big pile of money from early on, but it wasn't translating into poll numbers, and there was no movement. But he started going after Elizabeth Warren on Medicare for All and kind of got her into a corner with the help of Joe Biden and Amy Klobuchar and some others. But he was hitting her pretty hard and sort of trying to get back to the middle of the party. And I think that he was going after the same voters she has, which is it's a very white state, and the people involved in the Democratic primary process in Iowa are white and liberal and educated. So he was going after the Elizabeth Warren vote, not the Joe Biden vote. And he started to steal from her. Doesn't mean in this year and in this campaign and in this party that means he's on track for the nomination. I think that this is a divided party. They're not coalescing in huge numbers behind any of them. It's been a four-way race for a while. I think that Iowa is not going to be New Hampshire. New Hampshire is a place where you have open primaries. A lot of Republicans who don't like President Trump will be playing in the Democratic primaries. Tulsi Gabbard, the Congresswoman, is on the ascent in New Hampshire, but she has more support from Republicans than she does from Democrats. So it's not necessarily Senator Warren's or Senator Sanders for the taking. So a lot's going on here, but his support among African Americans is where the buck stops. He is at 0% in South Carolina. It's really hard to see that unless we see it shift really soon, creating a path to the nomination.
All right, Abby Stoddard, we have to leave it there, but thank you so much.
Thanks.
Catapults, Molotov cocktails, fire, and arrows. The pro-democracy protests in Hong Kong have exploded into frenzied violence.
And protesters are now cornered on campus, and communist Chinese troops from the mainland have arrived on the scene. Will they strike back with a crushing crackdown? Dale Hurd reports on the escalating crisis.
Hong Kong police are engaged in running battles with hundreds of protesters trapped at the city's Polytechnic University today. As a ring of police tightens around them, protesters are fighting with everything they have. They use catapults against riot police in armored vehicles, setting at least one armored car on fire. One police official was hit in the leg with an arrow in some of the worst fighting since the protest began. For days, protesters had barricaded the campus to keep police from getting in. Now, cornered by authorities, they're trying to get out. Hong Kong police are calling on protesters to surrender and face justice. But protesters were washing wounds and preparing more Molotov cocktails early today, getting ready for more combat. This protester said, "We are exhausted because we were up since 5 a.m. yesterday. We're desperate because our supplies are running low." Now, after the arrival of mainland communist Chinese troops to Hong Kong's streets for the first time, China's Global Times newspaper says police should use snipers with live ammunition at violent protesters. In this press briefing, the choice of words sounded like police were preparing the public for a much more violent crackdown.
The development, so violence has reached a critical level. Rioters has so intent to murder our officer at all costs.
Hong Kong Polytechnic's president said in a statement students would be allowed to surrender without further violence, but must also be arrested. The protests started peacefully in early June, sparked by a proposed law that would have allowed criminal suspects to be extradited to the mainland. Now, after 6 months, the protesters are tempting Beijing to crush an insurrection that would never be allowed in mainland China. Recently discovered Chinese documents show that Chinese leader Xi became a hardliner after seeing the collapse of the Soviet Union, which he blamed on weak leadership and a lack of resolve. Not a good sign for protesters. Dale Hurd, CBN News.
Well, we had a unique opportunity today to go behind the scenes at the United States Supreme Court for an interview with Justice Neil Gorsuch. We're working on a story about Gorsuch's book, A Republic If You Can Keep It. Senior Washington correspondent Jennifer Wishon also had an opportunity to talk with Gorsuch about something that's very personal to him.
You have led a storied career that has allowed you to be here as a justice on the Supreme Court. You are a husband, you are a father. Give us a sense of how your Christian faith sustains you.
Well, this is a very personal subject to me. And I have to say that there are certain moments in life when you feel the power of prayer around you. And for me, one of those moments was during the confirmation process. And I can't tell you how many cards, letters, notes, people coming up to me in the streets, in coffee houses, on airplanes. And they might say, I voted for this president. I didn't vote for this president. But they'd always say, I'm praying for you. And I wish you well. And I love our country. And I love our Constitution. And God bless you. And those moments meant more to me than I'll ever be able to express in words. There were points during that process where I was feeling pretty sorry for myself, Jennifer. And I had lost my anonymity completely. You don't realize what a gift that is till you lose it. Sitting in a restaurant and somebody's videotaping you slurping your noodles from across the restaurant. You know you've hit a new low when. And then I realized, as we all do, that when God takes something away from you, He often gives you something else in return if you just look for it hard enough. And what He gave me was an incredible gift. I get to witness now, every day, in countless ways, the goodness of the American people, their kindness, their love. And it touches me deeply. And I'll share one little quick story with you. I'm on an airplane from Denver to DC for the umpteenth time in the middle of the winter with walking pneumonia. And I'm feeling sorry for myself. And I'm seated next to an 8-year-old little girl. And her mother's somewhere else in the plane, for whatever reason. And we start hitting some serious turbulence. And this little girl leans over to me and says, "Would you mind holding my hand?" And as a father, nothing more precious than that, right? So we held hands for 20 minutes till the turbulence cleared. And then she leaned over to me and said, "Now, would you like to draw?" And so we spent the next 2 hours in her coloring book, coloring. And I was completely anonymous for those 2.5 hours. And I came out of that plane ride so totally refreshed and renewed. And of course, we're walking down the gangplank, and her mother recognizes me. And we shake hands, and it's nice. 2 weeks later, I get a thank you note in the mail from the little girl saying, "Thank you for holding my hand during that bumpy ride." And it's a picture she's drawn for me of an airplane and 2 stick figures in front holding hands. And to me, that's what it's all about.
And Jennifer joins us now. Jennifer, great interview, first of all.
Really good.
Take us behind the scenes. What was it like sitting down with Justice Gorsuch?
Well, it was very neat. Supreme Court justices give lots of speeches, but they rarely sit for interviews. And so we were inside the Supreme Court building in the Solicitor General's conference room. And to kind of highlight the gravity of the moment, the court actually had 4 staff members in there with us to kind of observe what was happening. So it was very special.
A rare opportunity, special indeed. But we also talked to him about his book. And one of the topics in his book that he touched on in a pretty detailed fashion was overcriminalization. Tell us a little bit about that.
So I asked him about this, Eric, and he actually leaned in and said, yes, he's very concerned about this. He's concerned that not enough Americans can afford a lawyer. He's concerned that it takes way too long to get to trial. And he's very concerned about something that I have reported on, which is when Congress delegates its authority to make laws to unelected bureaucrats. And bureaucrats have literally written hundreds of thousands of regulations in this country. There are literally too many to count, and I'm not making that up. people just stopped counting because they couldn't keep track. Some of these regulations will land you in prison, and he has a big problem with that.
All right, well, we have to cut it off there, but more on CBNnews.com?
Absolutely.
Okay, thanks, Jennifer.
Thanks, Jennifer. And we will be right back.
Life is better with a good night's sleep. Get your free DVD or booklet of Protect Your Sleep as the world watches from the outside.
It's a big diplomatic tug of war here in the Middle East.
Go inside the story with Jerusalem Dateline.
Israeli archaeologists are talking about a discovery that could change the thinking about the Temple Mount.
Join CBN Jerusalem Bureau Chief Chris Mitchell and get the biblical perspective on the events shaping the world.
What starts in Israel then ends up going to other places.
Watch Jerusalem Dateline Friday night at 9:30 on the CBN News Channel.
Life. It's meant to be lived fully. Jesus said it. I came to give you life. Life to the fullest. Life in your family. Life in your finances. Life in your body, mind, and spirit. Life in your everyday. At CBN.com, we're taking what Jesus said seriously. We're here to help you discover life. Life. Live it fully. CBN.com.
Tonight, the U.S. is reversing course on a major U.S. policy position on Israel.
Today, a surprise announcement. The U.S. is softening its position on Israeli settlements in the West Bank.
The establishment of Israeli civilian settlements in the West Bank is not, per se, inconsistent with international law.
And Secretary Pompeo says halting Israeli settlements in the Palestinian-occupied region has not advanced the cause of peace.
And CBN News chief political analyst David Brody joins us now for a little analysis on this. What do you make of this major announcement from Pompeo today?
Well, it's another huge announcement, a rivaling the U.S. Embassy move to Jerusalem. As a matter of fact, there are some comparisons here. You know, the State Department, I was at the briefing today, and basically the State Department saying that just like with the embassy in Jerusalem, they wanted to take that off the table, thinking that peace would be, you can give peace a chance if you took that off the table. They're also hoping they can take the settlement issue off the table by saying, look, we're saying these are basically legal. They're not illegal, and so that's a big deal. I did talk to the State Department spokesman, Morgan Ortagus, today, where she talked about how she believes is actually something that could actually help a peace deal. We'll see about that. But in addition, she talked about how there might be a little bit of a differentiation here in terms of how folks view Israel around the world compared to the United States. Have a look.
Our ultimate goal is for peace in the Middle East. Our ultimate goal is to get the Israelis and the Palestinians to the negotiation table to talk about the West Bank and to talk about Israeli settlements. But anytime, as we've seen at the UN and as we've seen through other international bodies, anytime you leave it up to international bodies or leave it to the world to decide the legal fate of Israel, they continually try and isolate and discriminate against Israel, and we here in the United States will not stand for that policy.
And part of that isolation has to do with what not just the United Nations did, but the Barack Obama administration did at the end of 2016, in essence abstaining from a vote on settlements, which really ticked off a lot of folks in Israel and conservatives here in America.
Yeah, a controversial move. David, what about the timing of this announcement? Is the timing political?
Well, there are a couple of things. First of all, they want the peace process to move forward, and they think the timing will help here. But it's been done for about a minute or so, or excuse me, a minute. It's been done for about a year or so, so they've been working on this for a long time. Look, bottom line is evangelicals are going to be very, very happy because of this. Basically, they believe, as you know, Judea, Samaria, the West Bank, the biblical homeland of the Jewish people. And right now, at least the way the Trump administration sees it, it's a victory for them.
David Brody, always a pleasure, sir. Thank you.
Thank you both.
Thanks, David.
We'll be right back.
On October 1st, 1961, history was made when a tiny station began transmitting the first signals of the Christian Broadcasting Network.
CBN, the Christian Broadcasting Network.
And now, a new era has begun with the all-new CBN News Channel.
Just moments ago, the Iron Dome intercepted an incoming rocket right on the Gaza border.
Administering in this area, spiritual warfare is definitely involved.
A 24/7 news network, bringing you the news you want from a source you can trust.
In Kenya, 40% of the medical services are actually provided by these Christian hospitals.
Let's talk about the economy.
Believers here are joining together to win people to Jesus Christ.
All your favorite shows now in one place. Go to cbnnewschannel.com to find out how to get the CBN News Channel on your TV all day, every day. CBN News. Life is better with a good night's sleep. Get your free DVD or booklet of Protect Your Sleep today.
Life. It's meant to be lived fully. Jesus said it. I came to give you life. Life to the fullest. Life in your family. Life in your finances. Life in your body, mind, and spirit. Life in your everyday. At CBN.com, we're taking what Jesus said seriously. We're here to help you discover life. Life. Live it fully. CBN.com.
Young people, millennials, are flocking to church.
It's not an exaggeration to say that we love to meet them and that we love to know their stories.
The situation for Kurdish Christians is worsening by the day after the Turkish invasion of Syria.
The continuing violence comes in the wake of American troops pulling out of the region, with Russian troops now in command of a U.S. air base in the northern city of Kobani. This as airstrikes hitting the ground in Syria are responsible for more deaths. The Turkish military ramping up drone attacks on military targets and civilians alike. And CBN News contributing correspondent Chuck Holton just got back from northern Syria, and he's joining us now. And Chuck, thanks so much for being with us.
Glad to be here.
Well, we've been seeing your reporting from Syria that the Turkish drone strikes are clearly devastating, some even calling them war crimes. Do you agree with that assessment?
Absolutely. Do I agree with that assessment? We watched war crimes happening. This is in the area that's supposed to be under a permanent ceasefire now by the Turks. But at the same time, they say they're in a ceasefire, they are literally bombing anything that moves out there. And the people in that area are being killed left and right. I was there with the Free Burma Rangers, a humanitarian aid organization, and I was driving the ambulance. So we were going in and taking wounded people out every single day. And as a matter of fact, the Turks just a little over 2 weeks ago bombed one of FBR's armored ambulances and killed one of their medics.
From the time the U.S. troops began pulling out, a main concern, of course, has been the Kurds who fought side by side with the American troops against ISIS. What's the situation with the Kurds on the ground, many of them Christian?
That's right. They are still resisting. They're doing the best they can, but they've never had to work under these kinds of environment with Turkish drones and airplanes overhead. And so that's changing the way that they're fighting, for sure. They have had to now go and try to talk to the Syrians under Bashar al-Assad and try to get help from them. which that was never something that they wanted to do. But surprisingly, the Kurds are a very optimistic people. And they are holding out hope that Donald Trump will do the right thing and at least declare a no-fly zone over that area. And that would really give them a breath of fresh air. So they're hoping that they can still work with the Americans, that the Americans will continue to support them, not just in the fight against ISIS, but in the fight against the Free Syrian Army, which is essentially ISIS being supported by the Turks.
All right, Chuck, we have to leave it there, but thank you so much for your insights.
Yeah.
Still ahead, why Kanye West says he is the greatest artist God has ever created.
Life is better with a good night's sleep. Get your free DVD or booklet of Protect Your Sleep today.
I'm Ephraim Graham, and this is Studio 5. Cruise with me as I discover the good things happening in the world of music, sports, television, and movies.
The fact that Ryan Coogler was going to be directing the film, I knew that something special was going to happen.
We'll chat with artists at the forefront of entertainment and explore the connection between popular culture and faith.
I asked my pastor, I said, well, does that mean I'm supposed to be a preacher? He says, well, no, you already have a pulpit.
Watch Studio 5 Wednesday night at 9:30.
Remember for a moment what it was like to be a child. You believed every story you were told. You saw a world full of endless possibilities. What stories will the world's orphaned and at-risk children believe? We believe the Bible tells the only story truly worth believing. We believe that every child should have the opportunity to dream, the chance to take challenges and turn them into possibilities, the chance to stand on the promises of God, to recognize their place in the greatest story ever told. They have their whole lives ahead of them. Theirs is a world of endless possibilities. They are looking for a story to believe. We will tell them that story. Will you join us?
Watch breaking news, in-depth exclusive stories and programs from health to entertainment you won't find anywhere else. The CBN News Channel, a perspective you can trust. Enjoy credible news reporting from around the world. Discover inspiring programs and stories of hope, all in one place from a Christian perspective. The CBN News Channel, a perspective you can trust. To watch the CBN News Channel, download the app or visit cbnnewschannel.com.
Kanye West is opening up about his faith in God.
The mega superstar rapper turned gospel artist took to Pastor Joel Osteen's megachurch in Texas to talk about the change in his life and said the only superstar better than him is God's own son.
The only superstar is Jesus. The greatest artist that God has ever created is now working for him.
West and his team performed songs from his new album, Jesus is King, this weekend for a packed crowd of over 15,000 worshipers. Wow. And I have to say that, you know, there are a lot of people who feel different ways about Kanye West, but drawing crowds like that, isn't this what evangelism is all about?
Yeah, and he's making an impact, no doubt.
Getting the word out.
Yeah. Well, that's going to do it for Faith Nation tonight.
Thanks for joining us tonight. We'll see you back here tomorrow night.